Welcome to industrial timber, where giant harvesters, burned forests, overloaded forwarders, unstable terrain, and industrial-scale logging operations collide every single day. One wrong cut, one bad recovery angle, one overloaded pull, and the entire operation can turn violent in seconds. The first system rolling into action is a mobile timber processing setup built for non-stop production. Hydraulic arms continuously feed fresh logs onto the platform, while the cutting system rapidly trims and processes each section. Bark, debris, and wood chips explode underneath the trailer as raw timber is transformed into manageable material almost instantly. Everything moves in one continuous automated cycle. No wasted motion, no wasted time. Just industrial efficiency tearing through timber at full speed. Then the scale becomes almost difficult to comprehend. Imagine standing beside a sequoia so enormous that removing it becomes a 2-day operation instead of a normal logging job. That was the reality at Alder Creek Grove after wildfire damage hollowed out the ancient giant from the inside. Officials had no real option except removal. Scenes like this remind you that wildfires do not simply destroy forests. They erase living history that survived for centuries before collapsing in only a few seasons. Winter operations bring a completely different kind of brutality. A forestry forwarder crawls through deep snow, while chain tires claw into frozen ground searching for grip. The crane swings massive logs through freezing air, while the machine fights uneven terrain hidden beneath the snowpack. Logging never really stops for winter. The environment just becomes more hostile. Then the harvesters arrive. Cutting heads clamp tightly around standing timber while high-speed discs slice through trunks in seconds. Sawdust and bark blast outward as the machines combine cutting, gripping, processing, and positioning into one continuous industrial workflow. Modern forestry equipment does in moments what once required entire crews working for hours. But wildfire cleanup changes everything. Burned trees become unstable, unpredictable, and deadly. One mistake, reading lean angle, root tension, or internal damage can turn the entire tree into a violent projectile. That is why these operations belong to experienced crews only. Burned timber does not forgive hesitation. Now the Jerf Crack Evo Pro Larica M enters the scene, looking like a machine designed specifically to conquer terrain that destroys ordinary equipment. Deep mud, steep slopes, unstable ruts, and collapsing ground barely slow it down. Instead of fighting the terrain, the forwarder controls it. Massive traction, controlled articulation, and raw pulling strength allow operations to continue in places most machines would immediately fail. One detail instantly stands out afterward: a worker actually wearing proper safety equipment. In forestry, professionalism often begins with respecting danger before danger forces respect onto you. Helmets, eye protection, gloves, harnesses, and chainsaw gear never feel important until the exact second something goes wrong. Then somebody gets called a maniac. In industrial logging, that word can mean incredible skill or terrible judgment. Sometimes both at exactly the same time. Another harvester locks onto standing timber and drops the tree with almost surgical precision. Hydraulic arms guide the trunk safely between surrounding trees while sawdust sprays across the forest floor. Watching these machines work almost feels unnatural because the scale of force becomes so controlled. Then the terrain turns ugly again. Overloaded timber drags behind a struggling machine while tires fight for grip on slick ground. In conditions like this, losing traction for even half a second can send thousands of pounds sliding backward instantly. Far above the forests of Canada, helicopters begin airlifting timber from remote zones where roads simply cannot exist. It is one of the most expensive forms of logging on Earth, but sometimes helicopters become the smartest solution available. The operation removes timber while minimizing damage to the terrain below. And honestly, the sight of giant logs flying through mountain valleys never stops looking surreal. Storm-damaged timber creates another nightmare. A logger carefully cuts through a fallen tree, still attached to a massive uprooted root system, while dangerous tension remains trapped inside the wood fibers. Even after hitting the ground, storm-fallen trees can suddenly shift with explosive force once pressure gets released. Then we enter giant timber territory. A 500-year-old Douglas fir stretching nearly 180 feet into the sky is no longer just a forestry operation. At that scale, crews are managing thousands of pounds of living structure under tension. Every cut becomes engineering. Every movement matters. The logger cuts deeper into the old-growth giant while sawdust explodes around the base. Seconds later, the entire trunk finally gives way. The impact shakes the surrounding ground as debris launches through the forest. Trees this massive do not simply fall. They crash with enough force to feel like controlled demolition. And honestly, the chaos surrounding heavy logging never really disappears. Background shouting, engines revving, operators signaling, chainsaws screaming, machines repositioning, there is always another risk building somewhere nearby. Sometimes the soundtrack alone tells the story. Industrial logging does not need dramatic music when the machinery already sounds violent enough on its own. Hydraulic systems groan under pressure, chainsaws scream through hardwood, and giant trunks explode into the dirt with enough force to shake the camera itself. Then comes another uncomfortable reminder. Proper protective equipment probably could have changed everything. In this industry, safety procedures only seem inconvenient until somebody gets hurt. Machine abuse becomes the next lesson. Riding the clutch in rough terrain destroys traction while putting enormous stress on transmissions and driveline systems. Operators who attack difficult terrain aggressively often destroy their own equipment faster than the environment ever could. Standing in the wrong position during a cut creates another dangerous situation. One unexpected shift in momentum and gravity takes complete control immediately. Sending a tree toward a house raises the tension even further. Once the trunk begins moving, the situation instantly becomes chaos management. There is no pause button once gravity takes over. Then the footage suddenly feels like stepping backward through history. Old crosscut saws appear, dragging the reality of historical logging operations back into view. Before hydraulic grapples, processors, and harvesters existed, forestry depended entirely on manpower, steel teeth, endurance, and brutal physical labor. Those old saws are not antiques. They are reminders of how unforgiving timber work used to be. Another overloaded transport operation proves the same lesson modern crews still ignore. Splitting the load into 2 trips probably would have saved time anyway. Overloading equipment rarely ends well, especially in difficult terrain. The harvesters return once again, gripping and processing trees with raw hydraulic power, while sawdust floods across the jungle floor. Modern industrial forestry feels less like traditional logging and more like a giant mechanized production line operating deep inside the wilderness. Then gravity intervenes again. Misjudge weight distribution for even 1 second and the entire load changes direction violently. The near accident that follows perfectly shows what happens when shortcuts replace proper safety procedures. Then disaster strikes directly into high-voltage power lines. The falling tree explodes into the cables, creating massive electrical flashes that light up the entire area. Arcing electricity bursts across the wires while the whole street glows from the surge. Out in logging country, hearing somebody yell, "Heads up," changes everybody's attention instantly. Those words usually mean something heavy is already moving. This is industrial timber giant trees, unstable slopes, overloaded machinery, burned forests, screaming chainsaws, industrial harvesters, dangerous recoveries, and operators fighting physics every single day. If you want more heavy forestry operations, giant sawmill systems, extreme logging equipment, raw timber processing, and real industrial machines pushed to the limit, subscribe now and join the crew. Drop a comment with the craziest machine or most dangerous moment in this entire operation. Finally, the Ester HDSN Gator saw system closes the video by proving older industrial sawmill equipment still deserves enormous respect when maintained properly. Heavy-duty frames, smooth feed systems, reliable splitting knives, and powerful motors continue converting oversized raw timber into clean lumber year after year. Even modern mills still admire systems built with this level of durability.